Pittsburgh Steelers fans, hello again and welcome to Monday. My name is Bryan Anthony Davis here at BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, your podcast producer, joined by Tony Defeo, the pride of Crafton, and Shannon White, the pride of the state of West Virginia. And people, believe it or not, people in Virginia, Kentucky, and Ohio revere him as well, from what I understand. Is that true, Shannon?
No, I'm not aware of that, but I'll take it.
Anybody who loves me, that's awesome.
Right.
Tony, what's going on, my friend?
I am tired today. I don't know why, but I'm tired. But I'll be okay. I'm ready to go. This show's going to give me adrenaline. How about you guys?
Shannon, are you tired or are you just tired of the rain?
No, I'm like, it's just raining and ugly today, and hopefully I'll have a good signal.
Yeah, it's not always great when we have the rain and Shannon's signal, so I understand that. It hits all of us in different ways, so that's something that we'll try to get through. But I hope all of you have had a fantastic weekend as we get closer and closer to the Pittsburgh Steelers season, and I am really excited about the fact that, my gosh, we have OTAs coming up. We have mandatory mini camps. That kind of stuff helps the Steelers take shape. So before I do that, Teddy Belcher asked, is this the Maulers chat? The Maulers have dropped to 1-5, and I am just despondent. They finally won last week and then lost yesterday, or Saturday. So I'm completely bummed. I was hoping for some fun Maulers talk. Fire Kirby Wilson, hashtag, that's all I've got.
I just wish, I think it'd be more fun, even if they were 1-5, if they played here, I definitely would have gone and seen them play, but I can't get into it with everybody being in Birmingham. I don't know.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh, Alabama Maulers isn't working for me, so hopefully they get back over here. And
on top of that, it's becoming quite obvious that any Pittsburgh team has no offense. It's ridiculous. It really is.
There you go. Let's go ahead and let's tackle some news that broke in the last couple hours. Very sad news. And we're just going to, I still don't have all of the correct information, so I'm just going to tell you what I know. And BTSC, and we have all learned that, well, Dwayne Haskins was drinking heavily and was under the influence between like 2.0 and 2.4, from what I understand. Or is it, I'm sorry, 0.2. I mean, 0.2 and 0.24. I'm not very good with my BACs. All I have to say is very unfortunate to learn that. There has not been any good news since we heard all of that information coming from April 9th. So once again, very sad news. And just wanted to go ahead and bring that up as well. I know we're going to have a lot of people that haven't heard of it yet on the live chat. So yes, very sad news indeed. George says 0.24. Gentlemen, this just continues to be tough. Tony?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. You never really heard much about that side of Dwayne Haskins, the heavy drinking, and I guess there were other substances in the system. So yeah, I mean, that's sad. And like a lot of these guys, I mean, and anybody in society, there are services that you can use to get you from A to B. So I don't know why anybody would risk their lives like that or anything. And I know teams have services too. So I mean, all you have to do is just call the team and say, hey, I need to get to the airport or wherever he was going that morning. And it's I don't know. I just don't get it, but it is sad news.
And, not to editorialize too much, you're just really sad. Shannon, any thoughts?
It's choices. We shape our destiny with our choices we make every day. And it's a tragic story, situation, ending. This doesn't really change that. It was already tragic, but this is what it is.
This is one of those parts of the news that I just don't even want to know. And that's why I'm enjoying ignorance a whole lot more these days and putting on the news less and less. But this is something that hits us as Steelers fans and as a editorial and podcast team that covers the Pittsburgh Steelers as well. So once again, tough news. It's just really sad. I don't even know what to say from there. So let's just go ahead and switch gears. And we're going to go and talk about what's going on with the Pittsburgh Steelers as far as getting ready for this 2022 season. So we've had the draft and we've talked a lot about the draft. And we've talked about which players could benefit the Steelers in their rookie year more and more. If you listen to Let's Ride a week and a half ago, Dave Schofield did a good job of breaking down all of the receivers in Kevin Colbert's era and how they did their first year. And it was really interesting to see guys in different categories, guys that you thought would be amazing in their rookie years weren't exactly, and some were better. Troy Edwards had the most catches for a while until Chase Claypool came along, and Chase Claypool had one of the best rookie seasons ever for a Pittsburgh Steeler. But what we want to go ahead and do when we look at the players drafted by the Steelers, we want to see who their long lost relatives in black and gold are. And I smile when I say that because no, they are not related. And I was going to say separated from birth in the title, but that separated at birth, but I don't think that's the same thing either. So what we want to do, we want to take these guys and say, and come up with a Steelers draft pick at that position that reminds us of this particular player. And we're going to go ahead and take a look at how they did in their rookie season. So let's go ahead and start with the man of the hour. Do you guys know his middle name yet? Because I do. Shannon, you should know because I think Jeffrey Benedict brought it up. Kenneth blank Pickett. Tony, I'll let you start.
Kenneth Petaway Pickett.
Oh, nope. No, it's he doesn't have Mike Tomlin's parents there. I like that. I love Petaway. I think that's so cool. Shannon, what do you got?
If GB brought it up, I don't remember. I know it. I think it starts with an M.
No, it does not. It does not. You know, at BTSC, you know, Dave, Jeff, and myself, we love to bring up the middle names of players. And that's why you are going to hear a lot of Kenneth Shane Pickett. Number 8, Kenneth Shane. So KSP, you down with KSP? I can't even get it. There we go. Yeah. Shannon was down with the OPP in the clubs back in the day. Hey,
raising the roof.
Yeah, I could see. Can you see Shannon at the gentlemen's clubs with the dollar bills making it rain?
You'd be the first to say it.
I don't even want to ask Tony, and you really don't want to ask me. Let's just say that. Let's just say the only reason I didn't do it because I just didn't have the dollar bills.
Wow. When it comes to that, I'm more boring than you think when it comes to that kind of stuff. It's been a long time, I'll tell you that.
Gosh, I have some stories, but this is not Tales from 2 a.m. So let's just go ahead and go out and talk about Kenny Pickett from the beginning. So we've had in different shows, we've talked about the tangibles, what he could bring, whether he's going to start in his rookie season. That's not what this show is about today. What it's about is who does he remind you of? So, Tony, when you think of a draft pick by the Pittsburgh Steelers, and it doesn't have to be the obvious one, the big one from 2004, what kind of situation does Kenny Pickett's situation coming in remind you of for the Steelers?
It's hard. It's hard with quarterbacks because unless you compare him to one of the big two, people are like, oh, how could? Oh no, the sky's falling. But he kind of reminds me a little bit because of his athleticism. People are going to hate it, but he's a former first-round pick, and that's Mark Malone, a guy who could really move. He was a good all-around athlete, And he was pretty accomplished when he came into the NFL. He just never really put it together as a quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But he doesn't really remind me of Ben. And I don't think he doesn't have the howitzer of an arm that Bradshaw did, although it's similar athleticism. So the only one I can really think of is Mark Malone. Guys like Tommy Maddox. He doesn't remind me of him, although he wasn't a draft pick for the Steelers. Or Cordell, it doesn't remind me of Cordell, or it certainly doesn't remind me of Neil O'Donnell. Neil O'Donnell was not mobile, and Bobby Brister was fairly mobile. But I think Pickett's a better athlete than Bubby, and maybe Bubby had a better arm. So I think maybe Mark Malone, because he was brought in to kind of be even though he was brought in when Bradshaw was still here, he was brought in to be the heir apparent to the franchise quarterback.
Now, Mark Malone did not throw a pass his rookie season. He did not throw a pass until 1981, which was his second year. He played in one game, and that was famous because for the longest time, Mark Malone had the record as the longest touchdown reception in Pittsburgh Steelers history and the longest pass play of 90 yards. And that was against Seattle in 1980. So really interesting. And Mark Malone apparently is in the live chat. He's here and he's letting us know that he's here.
All right, Mark Malone.
Shannon, you can go ahead and talk about Tony's answer, or you can go with a different one altogether.
Well, I had thought about this before the show, and he doesn't remind me of any Steelers draft pick. And the closest I could come would be Tommy Maddox, as Tony already said. But he wasn't a draft pick for the Steelers, and two, Pickett is a much better athlete with a better arm. So who he actually reminds me of would have been a guy I'd have loved to see on the Steelers in Joe Montana.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm not saying he's going to have that kind of career, but he has that coolness, that charisma. Everybody wants to compare him with Joe Burrow, who also reminds me of Joe Montana. So I'm going back to like the original when I say that he has a lot of the same characteristics as Joe Montana. Not saying that he's going to be him or have that kind of Hall of Fame career, but that is who he reminds me of.
Well, that's really good. And this is our show. We can veer off into that avenue. And if he reminds you of Joe Montana, that's fantastic. I love it. That's why I raised some eyebrows. I almost did the people's eyebrow, but I just can't physically do it. So let's go ahead and look at first. You mentioned Tommy Maddox. Tommy Maddox's rookie year for Denver. And I'm going to do a little trivia question for you. Where did he play after Denver and before the Steelers? And I'm not talking XFL. I'm not talking about anywhere else, but in the NFL, he was on two other teams. He was a teammate of a Steeler Hall of Famer for another team in 1994.
Didn't he play for the Falcons?
He was with the Los Angeles Rams in 1994. So he played with Jerome Bettis.
Oh, okay.
That was his third season. But in his first season, Tommy Maddox had an 0-4 record as a starter, 54.5% completion percentage. They did some weird things, though. They swapped him around with Sean Moore a good bit. They would just like every other play. Dan Reeves was doing some weird things in 1992 with him when we did not see a lot of. I know John Elway was hurt a lot that year, so very interesting stuff there. One thing I do want to do is go ahead and look at Joe Montana's rookie year as well, because I think that's going to be very interesting. And remember, the 49ers didn't get it together really until 1981. In 1979. He started one game, but apparently played in, I guess he was on the roster for 16. He was 0-1. That's Joe Montana. And so in that game, 13 for 23 with a 56.5 completion percentage. His next year, he was 2-5, but he had a very good completion percentage of 64.5, 1,795 yards. And this is where you start to see the glimpses of it. He had 15 touchdowns thrown and he had only 9 interceptions. So that's he never looked back from there. 1981 was his breakout year when he was the MVP, offensive player of the year. He was in an all-pro, and he was also a Pro Bowler. So that's when he really took off. Shannon, let me ask you a question about that. If you're going to compare him to starting like a Joe Montana, what would you think of that kind of start? Because the first year with a quarterback is kind of to be a throwaway. Would you agree?
Yes, a lot of it is location, and system driven. You know, he was with Bill Walsh, who is maybe the greatest offensive genius the NFL's ever seen. So, you know, he went to the perfect spot. Hopefully, Pickett's in the perfect spot with the Steelers and with Matt Canada. But that remains to be seen, but we can hope.
Let me ask you this, because this has been the big question. And of course, and we haven't done a comparison against Ben Roethlisberger, and we really don't want to. And the reason we don't want to compare him to Ben Roethlisberger is because of they're two completely different quarterbacks. But what I want to look at Kenny Pickett, and I want to look at Ben Roethlisberger's numbers, and to see if what we would be, how far off you think Kenny Pickett would be if he started 13 games. And that's how many games Ben Roethlisberger started. So I'm going to start with Tony here. If Kenny Pickett starts 13 games, which might be a disappointment to some because that means either Mitch Trubisky gets hurt or Mitch Trubisky is not playing well in the first 3 games or 4 games. So if he starts 13, what do you think a good completion percentage would be for Kenny Pickett?
Well, if he's playing in 13, if he's starting 13 games, that tells me that he's doing a pretty good job. You know, unless it's because of a major injury to Trubisky. So I would say in today's NFL, even for a rookie quarterback, about 65%.
All right. Ben Roethlisberger had, what was his completion percentage, you think, Shannon, in his first year?
I'm going to say around 60.
Ben had a 66.4 completion percentage in his rookie year. So very good. If you got 65 out of Kenny Pickett, I think you've got a fantastic rookie year. When you look at Ben Roethlisberger's career, he averaged 64.4%. So you have the beginnings of a Hall of Famer if you have 65. And look, we're not predicting these numbers. We're just saying what would be ideal, whether they're going to happen or not. Tony?
I just want to add one number that always intrigued me about Ben and all these all-time great quarterbacks is the average per attempt. And Ben's, especially early on, those Super Bowl years, it was fantastic. And you go back and look at Terry Bradshaw's, I mean, like in the Super Bowl, it was like 11, you know. So if Kenny Pickett is averaging like 8-9 yards per attempt early on, that to me, that bodes well for his future as a potential franchise quarterback for the Steelers.
You know, Ben's average his rookie year was 8.4. He got it as high as 8.7 his sophomore year. Then it's funny. It went up and down. It fluctuated. His third season of 2006, after they won the Super Bowl, was only 6.1. And then you look at the last 3 years, 4.9, 6.6, and 6.2. So his average ended up being 7.6. But if you look at the fact that Ben was getting so many more yards, and when I say so many more yards of attempt of close to 9 his first 2 seasons, that's pretty good. So really interesting stuff there. One thing about Ben is a lot of people, you know, he was AP Offensive Rookie of the Year, but he had a lot of protection. When I say protection, he had protection from the running game, Deuce Staley and Jerome Bettis. He had good receivers. The big thing with Ben, though, is would you believe that he was only had 17 touchdowns versus 11 interceptions, and that's pretty good. But these days, you don't think of 17 touchdowns from a quarterback to be a lot, do you, Tony?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, I think that's the way the passing game has evolved, even from 2004. I think that would be a lot of people if you gave them those numbers after the fact or before the fact, they'd probably be disappointed.
So with that, Shannon, if you throw in the fact that you expect an offensive line to be better this year, and you throw in the fact that Najee Harris should be a Super Bowl and is probably built to carry the load, let me ask you this. Would you feel that Kenny Pickett could have numbers close to Ben Roethlisberger his rookie season? Or do you think Kenny Pickett needs to have higher than 17 and 11?
It could be similar. 17-11 if Najee Harris has 1,500 yards or more and they become a predominant running team and, with a good bit of play action and misdirection, those numbers, 60, I think you said 66% or something for being as a rookie. If Pickett could duplicate them numbers, a lot of it's when he makes plays at what time and what parts of the game. 2 or 3 plays a game for a quarterback that's going to make the difference. And I believe he has that charisma and that coolness to come through in the clutch. Again, we'll have to see. But the main thing is if he can start out that rookie year and if he does have to start or earns the right and he can take him to the playoffs, that bodes well for the future.
It really does. Now, Tony, this is my last question here on Kenny Pickett, and it's simply this. Do you want to see Kenny Pickett his rookie year?
Part of me does, yeah, because I think it'd be a great story. I think if he wins the starting job, I think it'll be based more on merit than it will be out of this, necessity because of injury or because of Trubisky failing. So part of me does want to see him as rookie year because it's just because I think back to how it was with Ben, and I know that's not common for rookie quarterbacks, but it would be a great story, and I think it would bode well for the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers if he could come out and be the starter sooner rather than later.
Shannon White, do you want to see Kenny Pickett in 2022?
It's hard for me to answer until I see what the offensive line looks like. I think Trubisky could play behind the line if it's just slightly improved from last year. And I don't think it would affect him as much as it could Pickett, because Pickett being the first round pick, if he comes out and struggles behind that offensive line, they don't give him time to be able to go through his progressions. And it's a repeat of last year. I think he could really stunt his growth. So to me, it depends on what the offensive line looks like in training camp and the preseason before I would want to put Pickett behind it.
Okay, so my answer is no. I do not want to see Kenny Pickett. Has nothing to do with Kenny Pickett. It has everything to do with the plan, and the plan being to start Mitch Trubisky. And if Mitch Trubisky has a good season, then you don't have to play Kenny Pickett. I want an Alex Smith / Pat Mahomes rookie season for Kenny Pickett. And actually Mitch Trubisky, even though it's not his rookie season, but you know what I'm saying. So as much as I would like to accelerate the future, I still want to give the Mitch Trubisky experience an attempt. And I'm in the Ike Taylor camp when I think Mitch Trubisky is going to be a Pro Bowler, or did he say All Pro? I can't remember what Mitch said on what Ike said on Believe Sports. But I will say that I definitely want to see Kenny Pickett, but just holding a clipboard. And I want to see the Mitch show this year. And I don't want it to be a situation where he has to play because other people failed. So let's go ahead and move ahead. And this is a really interesting one. I think this is everybody's favorite Steeler already, and it's George Pickens out of the University of Georgia. As far as rookies, he's a favorite of a lot of people just because of the personality. He came out wearing his jersey the other day, and I kind of think of George Pickens as the guy that's going to be wearing his jersey to restaurants and clubs. You'll see him wearing his only 14, like Chris Henry used to do. It just seems like, and Shannon, you're a West Virginia guy, so you remember Chris Henry. And he actually did that at WVU and with the Bengals. He would wear his jersey out, which I thought that was clever.
That's what the players always do in the commercials.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true, Tony. Yeah. In commercials, they just walk in and like, hey, I'm Eli Manning, and he's wearing his jersey. It's like Eli can afford a lot more than just his jersey, but he's going to like Arby's wearing a jersey. So let's talk about George Pickens, number 14. We'll start with Shannon this time. Who does Pickens remind you of? And if you want to say another player, that's fine. I'm going with Steelers guys, but who does he remind you of?
Well, Pickett, there wasn't anybody. But with Pickens, there's a couple. He kind of reminds me of John Stallworth in that he's longer, he's lanky, he's physical. He's coming in, he's feeling a little disrespected, kind of like John did. And I believe he's going to bring a lot of attitude and aggressiveness to the position. Swan was all and grace and incredible, where Stallworth was the hard, he was the hard-nosed, aggressive. He could handle Oakland and their physical secondary. That was his mindset. He wanted to go up against that physical cornerback. So Pickens reminds me of Stallworth in that way. But he reminds me of Martavius Bryant for his explosiveness and his the angular, sinewy build he has. His physique, he might be thin, but he is very strong. And you can tell that when he body slams cornerbacks. So he kind of reminds me of the explosiveness of Bryant, even though he has better body control and hands than maybe anybody in this draft class. So when you compare him to them two guys, I'm real excited to see what he can do.
All right, let me ask you this. 16 receptions for 269 yards and a touchdown out of George Pickens. Is that enough?
No.
Okay, that is what you got out of John Stallworth his rookie year.
But, again, it was the teams are not comparable.
Absolutely. And it's not.
So
just like Jack Ham would definitely be a Pro Bowler in 2022.
All day.
Yeah. So, I mean, because he would also be 30 pounds heavier. So
right.
We all would have been.
And he would be just as fast, if not faster.
Yeah. So if I was 50
definitely.
years old in 1984, I'd be 170. The technology and everything else has made me what I am, the slob I am today. So let's just go ahead, and I like that. I think that's interesting, Stallworth. And Stallworth was 6'2" at the time, which you got to think, if he was 6'2" at the time, Stallworth is 6'5" today, maybe.
Right.
Yeah, you know what I mean? Because you did not see a lot of 6 foot guys over 6 foot catching footballs back in the 1970s. If you did, I'm sure there's some, but there's not a lot. So, Tony, what do you think of the comparison of John Stallworth to Mr. Pickens?
I like it because he's Stallworth was fast, but people didn't think of him as fast, and Pickens obviously he's a deep threat, but he doesn't have blinding speed. He's not like a 4.2 guy like Martavius Bryant was. What he 4.47 at the combine. Maybe he's a little faster than that after a year or two removed from a torn ACL. But that's a good comparison. But he kind of reminds me of and somebody mentioned it in the live chat, Plexico Burress. Same kind of body type, similar size, deep threat, but not blinding speed. And he's not afraid to lay out for a ball. And Plexico was the same way. He wasn't somebody who could necessarily go over the middle, but he he could lay out for a ball downfield. You remember Ben's first game against the Patriots? His first touchdown was a Plexico laid out in the end zone to catch that. So that's kind of who he reminds me of as far as personality. And there's no question he reminds me of Juju. I mean, it's just with the silliness and he's not afraid to be this butt of a joke or joke around, period. So that's kind of who he reminds me of there too. And of course the social media stuff. And as far as the tenacity, it's easy. It's Hines Ward because of what you see on the field at Georgia with the fights and blocking people through the wall. So, but more than anything, it reminds me of Plexico.
So let me ask you this: John Stallworth, Plexico Burress, who had more yards and who had more touchdowns their rookie season?
Oh, it would have to be. I mean, I think Plexico. He probably eclipsed that in 2 games, but it was a different time. Like Shannon said, I'm going to go with Plexico.
Shannon, are you sticking with Tony and Plexico having more yards?
Oh, yes.
Plexico had more yards by 4. Plexico had 273. John Stallworth had 269.
That's interesting.
So, really, yeah, that is really interesting. And you got to think. I remember because that rookie season, I remember they played the Vikings in the Super Bowl, and Fran Tarkenton was the league leader in passing with, I believe it was 1,700 yards, somewhere around there. So, yeah, it was definitely a different time. Plexico started a lot more games than Stallworth. Stallworth only started 3. Plexico had more receptions. He had 22 and Stallworth had 16. So you could see that the best used to would rise to the top there. And man, I've got to bring this up because I'm not doing my job as a host if I do not bring this up. Ivor Mektenpox the Monk. I used to bathe Stallworth's teacup poodle when I was in high school. I totally forgot to get an autograph. John Stallworth, and he also says John Stallworth is the nicest man. I absolutely love that. The fact that John Stallworth had a teacup poodle, I think it's awesome to me.
That's perfect.
I read that, I'm like, okay, that's awesome. So, you know what? I was going to say something like Plexico Burress myself, but I like Tony's hybrid. I think that's really a thing because he does remind me of a tenacious. He's from Georgia, so that was Hines Ward. He reminds me of a tenacious type guy like Hines. And you have a lot of people concerned about George Pickens because he won't mind mixing it up. But you've got Hines Ward had no problem mixing it up.
Right.
They put a bounty on the man's head.
Dirtiest player in the game, voted by his peers, or second dirtiest, or whatever.
I live in Maryland. A couple years ago, the Baltimore Sun had a poll. He was retired. Still the hated athlete. Hines Ward is one of the most hated athletes in the history of Baltimore awesome. Ravens fans.
Rent free, baby.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, he lived rent free in a lot. He had timeshares in people's heads.
Right.
It was paid in full. I love it. Let's get on the move on here. It's going to get tougher as we go. So DeMarvin Leal, and remember it's Leal, not Leal. Everyone wants to put in headlines, is Leal the deal, the real deal, Leal? And it's not even Leal. It's Leal. So what do you think, Tony, of Leal with cheese?
Well, it's fitting because he seems a bit of a tweener as far as interior lineman or end. So it was hard for me to think of somebody, but maybe someone like a Javon Hargrave, who I think was probably a better athlete, maybe. But he was kind of maybe on the smaller side for a nose tackle, but he was athletic enough to play on the end too. So as far as draft picks over the years, it's maybe you guys can come up with some better answers, but the only one I could really think of would be Hargrave.
Shannon White.
To me, I've said it from the beginning. If you see him in the rookie coming around and his mobility and his size, he reminds me of Lamar Woodley. And I know everybody keeps saying he's going to be a defensive lineman, but he just looking at him, and of course that's without pads and everything. But he looks more like an edge guy, and he's very similar in size and weight to what Woodley was. And they tried to keep Woodley's weight down a little bit so they could consider him an edge. Because if he'd have put on about 10, 15 pounds, he'd have been an end. So I think he can have a similar impact. If he can bring that kind of pass rush and use that size to set that in, very happy if he could turn out to be Woodley 2.0.
All right, so we have DeMarvin Leal at 6'4", 290. I'm looking at a guy that he reminds me of, but guy's slightly smaller, but you've got to think that he was drafted 41 years ago from the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was 6'3", 263. For some reason, I think of Keith Gary when I think of DeMarvin Leal. And the thing, it's really interesting because Keith Gary was a guy that he held out his first 2 years. He actually went to Canada and played for the Montreal Alouettes. And the Steelers ended up they lost their rookie in 1983 after 6 games, their defensive line rookie, because he was in a car accident, was paralyzed, and that was Gabe Rivera. And they got the services of Keith Gary finally in that 1983 season. He had his rookie year with the Steelers basically in 83. I kind of he didn't do a whole heck of a lot, but he had 2 fumble recoveries that first year. And I think if you can get 2 sacks and 2 fumble recoveries out of a guy like DeMarvin Leal, you're going to be really excited for anything beyond his rookie year, especially with the guys that you have ahead of him. So, I'm going to go ahead and say that he reminds me of an old timer because I grew up watching Keith Gary, and I had a chance to meet Keith Gary a couple years ago. What a really nice guy. So I'm going to throw in Keith, but there's so many different ways to go. And this is just a hard exercise. It really is. Let's go ahead and move on to the 4th round draft pick. It's CA3. And I'm still bummed that he did not get number 16 because I wanted Austin 3-16. Just blew by your bleep. Shannon White, Calvin Austin 3.
I've said before, he might be the fastest Steeler to ever put on the jersey. I've heard people talk about Ike Taylor's 40 time, which I think it was his pro day. I don't think it was at the combine. Dwight Stone, different people like that. But Austin can literally fly. He is a track star. And it shows up on his film. His acceleration and the way he attacks seams. Smaller guys a lot of times are hesitant to go full speed because whether it's a punt return, a kick return, if you get to, you got guys running full speed and they catch you in that seam and you're trying to accelerate through, you can get blowed up. But so there's really nobody that I can say he reminds me of. And I hate to always say Tyreek Hill, but I think he's about the closest comparison because he is a wide receiver. He's not like a Darren Sproles or another little guy like that. And he is put together pretty good. And I don't know how much weight he'll put on. But for me, the only comparison I could come up was Tyreek Hill. And of course, he's not a Steelers draft pick. So,
Tony, what do you got?
He was the one of the first 4 anyway that I couldn't really think of a Steelers comparison. I mean, he's a shifty little receiver, and he can obviously he's a great punt returner. So you could say like Lynn Swann or Louis Lips, but they were 1st round picks. I don't know if he's hopefully he would have the same kind of career as both of them. That would be great. Dwight Stone's another great comparison because even though he was a running back initially and then he switched to receiver because of that blinding speed and the ability to return kicks. Other than that, I really can't think of one. But like Shannon said, he is put together for somebody that small. So hopefully he can go on to have a career similar to Tyreek Hill. That would be great, wouldn't it?
Oh, that would be absolutely amazing. But let me ask you fellas this. What if out of Calvin Austin III, they got these numbers: 61 receptions, 714 yards, 5 touchdowns. Would you take that out of Calvin Austin III, his rookie season?
I would sign my name in blood.
You know what you just signed your name for?
That's Troy Edwards, ain't it?
You just signed for a faster Troy Edwards, because that's what he did in 1999. Troy Edwards was 5'10", and he did not have the speed, but Troy Edwards had speed. But he got lost behind Hines and got lost behind Plexico and just didn't do the things with the playbook in the meeting rooms that a lot of people wanted him to do. But I tell you what, 4TL Music Group has a guy here, and I'm going to bring this one up on the screen because this is probably an even better comparison. But he asked, is CA3 more dynamic than Antoine Randall L, guys? And I've got to actually say that I think he is. I think that he can be. And if he's anything close to Antoine Randall L, then you've got, with the other guys that you have on this team, then you just hit the jackpot. And I want to go ahead and take a look at Antoine Randall L and his stats, his rookie season. And I think it's one of those things where you would agree that he had a really good rookie year for the Steelers. He was primarily used as a gadget and as a kick returner and a punt returner. I don't know if we're going to see that, but would you also take 47 receptions, 489 yards, and 2 touchdowns with a catch percentage of 72.3%? Would you take that out of him?
For a fourth round pick, absolutely, yeah. I mean,
and a projected number 4 receiver, yes.
Then you're getting Antoine Randall L. And it's funny when we talk about Troy Edwards too. Antoine Randall L came in also in 2002 and helped kick him closer to the curb as well. So that's kind of what happened. They were looking for receivers back then. They really were. Steelers don't have a 5th round pick, and they had a 6th round pick, and this one's going to be tough. I don't even know, because we don't even know how Connor Hayward is going to be used. So let's just, if you can't come up with a comparison for Connor Hayward, then what I want you to do is, what do you want from Connor Hayward? But if you have a comparison, please throw it out there, fellas.
This is going to sound weird, but for some reason, he reminds me of a Chris Fuamatu. I don't know why, but
what?
I was thinking that. Yeah, he just reminds me, like, he's somebody who can catch out of the backfield, although he's probably a better athlete, and he seems like somebody who could be a bruising type runner, somebody you can be sort of like a change of pace. Even though it's weird to say, because Najee Harris is such a hard-nosed runner. But somebody who can also, even though he wasn't an H-back, but that's kind of who he reminds me of for some reason.
But Fu could catch the football too.
Oh, yeah.
Shannon, do you have a comparison or do you have a wish for Connor Hayward?
No, I have a comparison, and
Okay.
I'm sure I'll get a lot of flack for it. But he reminds me of Hines Ward.
Woo!
He is incredibly physical. He's intense. He will do anything on the football field. He'll block. He can run on 3rd and short, 4th and short, goal line. He'll throw that kick out block. He'll play special teams. He reminds me of Hines Ward coming in. Now, Hines Ward was going to be a receiver, and we know that Connor's going to be more of an H. Because of his versatility, because of his pedigree, and his mentality, he reminds me of Hines Ward. And I believe he's going to surprise a lot of people and he's going to be a valuable weapon all around. Even if he ain't the one scoring the touchdowns, it wouldn't shock me at all if he don't get him in position with an excellent block or making a key special teams tackle each game. I just expect that out of him. So for me, it's Hines Ward.
So you think that this guy is all heart, is what you're telling me? He's a blue collar champion.
Yeah, I think that. Huh?
He's a blue collar guy.
Yeah, I think that he's got that Hayward mentality that Arnhead had and Cam has. That he just when he's all business when he's on the field, and so who he reminds me of, like I said, that's how Ward was, and so I'm expecting big things from him as a rookie.
You know, I think I am too, and it's just how he's used, and I'm glad to see how he's used. I think a guy like this would have been wasted with Randy Fichtner a couple years ago. But I would love to, man, I can't wait to see the lab reports from the laboratory that is one Matt Canada, because, man, it's going to be exciting. Wow, you know what? I don't have a comparison for him, but I know what I want out of the guy. I want just this when he's called the ultimate Swiss Army knife by Mike Tomlin. That is absolutely what I want to see. And because of what you just said, I just came up with the title, not really the title, but the premise for next week's show. Do you guys let's look at the 7th round real quick, and I'll go over next week's show right after we do this. But Chris Oladokun and Mark Robinson, we don't know enough about these guys to go ahead and compare them to anybody that we've seen in the past. And it would be tough unless you guys have comparisons. I just know my wish list for both of them is like this. Mark Robinson makes the team, plays on special teams, and works his way into the equation in year number 2. Chris Oladokun, we don't see anything from him except for being a 3rd-string quarterback that learns the system, but he's most valuable when the Steelers are playing the Ravens and teams that have a quarterback that can run so they don't have to pick up a quarterback. What are your thoughts on Chris O and Mark R, Shannon?
The Steelers are great at picking up guys like Robinson who are making position switches. Hasselrig, when he was a college wrestler and they turned him into a Pro Bowler.
You know he's from my hometown, right? Hasselrig.
Yeah, you've told me that. Yes, they're excellent at doing that. And he with his physicality and his tackling of Kendrell Bell. When Bell first came in, he was so physical, and he would meet these guys in the hole, and he'd blow guys up. And we all loved that because of his aggressiveness and his tackling prowess. That's who Mark Robinson reminds me of. Now, he's not going to be there yet because, again, 1 year at the position. I agree with you. I want to see him make the team, excel on special teams, and then really be a contributor the next year.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Shannon.
And then as far as Oladokun, the Steelers, a lot of people compare him to Dodson. Now, Dobbs. Dobbs is very few guys can match him intellectually. He was real. That was his main value. But they are very similar in arm, athleticism, size. So he can offer them a lot, as you say, as a scout team quarterback. But you do not want to see him on the field. If he gets up on the field this year, unless it's game 17 and the Steelers have already clinched and they just want to throw him out there, we don't want to see him out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Tony, any extra thoughts?
As far as Mark Robinson, I really couldn't think of a comparison. I'm just impressed by the fact that he switched positions in his senior year, and he basically walked on Ole Miss, and he became a starter, and he was productive, and that's pretty impressive for the SEC. As far as Oladokun, he kind of reminds me like Shannon said of Dobbs, but he also reminds me of the quarterbacks that they had on the roster already, at least Trubisky and Pickett or the guys that they drafted, or I said that wrong. Trubisky and Pickett, because that's who they're looking for now. They're looking for that kind of a mobile quarterback. But it kind of reminds me of Dobbs, Dennis Dixon, that kind of a player. So if he makes a team, like Shannon said, like everybody's, I'm sure, in agreement with it, you don't really want to see him unless it's the last game and everything's already clinched.
All right. So, gentlemen, very good. We talked about all 7 draft picks for the Steelers, who they remind us, maybe some wish list, maybe some hopes as far as stats. If you can get some of those stats out of these guys, that's fantastic. Now, I know you guys have been waiting because I have not discussed this with you, and I promise that I discuss this with you every week, but I know how your brains think, and I think you're going to like this. So I'm just going to throw it out at you. Next week on this show, it's going to be part 1 of a 2-part show. And we are going to go over the current Steelers that are all blue-collar Steel City team. But we're going to go a little bit further than that. Not only are we going to do current Steelers, we're going to go with the offense. And it is the all-time blue-collar Steelers team. When we do all-time, we start in 1969, the Chuck Noll era and on. So, gentlemen, what do you think about that show?
I like it.
Is it going to be all the positions, all 22, or
we're just going to do offense next week and defense?
Okay, yeah, that sounds good to me.
And 4TL asked me to hold on. Bad, hold on. Is AB retiring as a Steeler? If he does, I don't have a problem with it. Really don't. I'm not looking for him to play. But if you'd like to hear more about that 4TL, can you go ahead and check out Bad Language that came out at lunchtime today, where I compare Antonio Brown to my ex-wife, to my starter. It's actually not as bad as you think. It's not as bad as you think. I have forgiven. I'm not going to exactly forget, but I will let her retire as an ex-wife of mine, and if she needs anything, I'll give it to her.
Hey,
I'd help out. Yes.
AB screwed us all over, buddy.
Yeah,
right.
So trust me, so did she. But all I'm saying is that you go through some time and you realize that, okay, there's a reason that I loved AB and I loved that other woman in the first place, and I'm not going to forget about the good times. So I'm not going to erase her from my memory. Not going to race AB, and if AB wants to retire as a Steeler but never plays a Steeler again, because I'm not bringing her back as a wife, but if he wants to retire as a Steeler, I have no problem with it. With that being said, she did not throw furniture. I could go over a list, but that's
what I was.
I don't think you guys want to hear all about that. But there's some doozies of stuff, but going through some stuff too at the time. So I'm not going to go ahead and run her down. I mean, God bless her. I'm in contact with her. I haven't seen her since the courtroom in 2003, but I haven't spoken to her, but I've talked to her on Messenger, and my wife knows, my current wife knows, and she was a gateway to the good life I have now. It didn't work out with the two of us, but I wish her well, just like I'm going to wish Antonio Brown well going forward. And I will retire him as a Steelers because of the 8 years that he gave us. And I'll retire her as a wife for the 2 weeks she gave me out of 4 years. So with that being said, I'm not bitter. I'm happy with where I am, and I'm not going to forget about the past. So there you go. Let's get on out there and check out BTSC for all of your Pittsburgh Steeler needs. I'm going to say it right now. You got to go back and listen to that Bad Language. It was a good one. I thought it was good. It was my own show. I think it's good. I put it on. Go back and check out Tony and Kyle last night on the Q&A. Don't miss Jeff Hartman this morning show. Fantastic show that came out Monday morning. He had Jeffrey Benedict on as a guest. So really good. So check out Let's Ride. Tomorrow morning, Jeffrey Benedict has his solo show. You know that's always good from the cutting room floor. And tomorrow night, it's the Scobros. Shannon, we're going to get you and Jeffrey a guest for Wednesday night to talk some more DeMarvin Leal. Now, let's call him Leal. Let's call him his real name. So we're going to do that. So there's no reason to go anywhere else. Make it your one-stop shop. Hell, make it your non-stop shop. And we have 3 things that we want to ask you to do. We want you to, 1, be safe. Shannon, say it. 2, Shannon doesn't know it. Be true to yourself. And 3, always be behind the steel curtain. I'm sorry, I just put Shannon on the spot. I feel really bad.
We're going in and out. My signal's going in and out, so I didn't hear you.
All right. So what I don't feel bad enough to say, and in fact, not just say it, I'm going to bellow it just when you think you've got all the answers. Tony Defeo.
We keep changing the questions.
Shannon, you take us home, baby.
Woo!
For Shannon, for Tony, I'm BAD. This is Behind the Steel Curtain. You are the live chat. You are BTSC Nation. We love you. We will see you nonstop on BTSC. That's behind the steel curtain.com.